Great, thank you. Good evening and welcome to KTC SoCal Weekly Sangha Gathering. My name is Jody and I am the director here at KTC SoCal in Southern California. We're so happy to have all of you joining us this evening. We welcome you to log on to our website, ktcsocal.org, where you can find information on our center, upcoming events, as well as different levels of membership. If you should have any questions about becoming a member, please feel free to reach out to us. You can also become a subscriber on our YouTube channel, KTC SoCal, where you can watch all of these teachings posted about a week after they're live. So check it out. For those of you residing in Southern California, we will be having an in-person teaching with Lama Karma August 17 and 18, with a public talk given at Santa Monica Yoga on August 16th. And for more information on that, you can enter register. You can log on to our website or you can leave a comment and chat and we will send you registration information for this event. You should also receive something if you're on our email list. This evening, we are so pleased to welcome Lama Adam, continuing the series on the wings of wisdom and compassion. You can also make a donation to Lama Adam or to any of our teachers by following the link on the website or through the email newsletter announcement. Before I hand it over to Lama Adam, please do mute your microphone so we don't hear any background noise. And we are so pleased to have you here, Lama Adam. We know it's late for you, but it really means a lot that you're here with us this evening. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Just a sec. I want to, I just got a new computer and I just went to share screen and I have to change a setting here first. So I think this will do it. I'm gonna have to quit and come back. Sorry about that, but I'll be right back.
Jody, I think you have to make him co-host. I can't do it because I'm co-host myself. So when he comes on, I can't hear you. You're muted.
When he comes on, I'll make him co-host.
Okay.
Hi, everyone.
Daniel, okay, so there we go.
Okay, always something new with Zoom, you know?
You're co-host now, you see that, right?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah. So I should be able to share. I just had to allow screen recording on my screen, but it looks like we got it. Let's see. I want to share the refuge prayer so we can chant together. There we go. Okay, so we'll chant once in English, once in Tibetan, and once again in English. I take refuge in the Buddha.
Adam?
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting. There's like a window in front of your window, so we can't see it properly. So it says like audience window or something for us. And behind it, we can see the refuge prayer, but it's blurred. So it looks like there's like a little button you have to press. I don't know if you can see it on your screen as well.
Yeah,
Sorry.
let me see if I can find that one. No, I appreciate it. That's exactly the feedback I need. There we go. Okay. I think I got it now. I'm gonna say this is it. How's that?
Perfect. Thank you.
Good. Okay, thank you. All right, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of accomplishing generosity and the other perfections, may I attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. sangye chudang soki chognama chanchu padu dagni kyapsuji daki jinsoki pesunamki rola pinchi sangye drupasho. I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of accomplishing generosity and the other perfections, may I attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. And I'll say a short prayer of my own. Paden sawe Lama Rinpoche Nagi Jiwo Bedi Den Jula Paden Jembo Goni Jezunte Usun Duki Nujup Sa Duso. Okay. So it's good to be back. Super excited about this second part of the Ultimate Bodhicitta section of this Lojong material that we've been going through. I don't want to spend a lot of time on recap because we can do that again next time around because this time we'll be closing out the Ultimate Bodhicitta section. Next time when we jump to Relative Bodhicitta, we'll not only recap, but we'll also start to do like a guided practice together through each of the steps. But today there's a lot to get through, and as I've said previously, I'm using Trungpa Rinpoche's Training the Mind as like my primary text here. Usually, in most of the teachings I've ever received on this, it's the Great Path of Awakening that we're using, and this is actually a commentary on the same text. The Trungpa's book, Training the Mind, is a commentary on this text. So I'm using a little bit of both, but Trungpa, as you may guess, is pretty unique in his presentation of this stuff. And so I'm really trying to kind of take it from his approach. And this section in particular, in this Ultimate Bodhicitta material, is so profound. But at the same time, hopefully we leave feeling like it's more accessible than we did before. And because he's so skillful in teaching this, I'm going to do a lot more just reading this time because I really can't say a lot of this stuff better than he is. But I want to start with a short meditation. We can kind of think of this as like an active meditation or almost like a daily life kind of practice, like because I'm going to also kind of be teaching a little bit as we go through this meditation. So we'll be kind of engaging with short practices, thinking about it, talking about it a little bit as a way to frame up some of this material. And the reason why I want to start that way is because I know a lot of you were here last time. My big takeaway from the stuff we went through was his introduction of ultimate bodhicitta as being the product of like a positive naivete. And in particular, like he said that we can all easily experience this ultimate bodhicitta through application of shamatha and vipassana. And he described that as being like precision and total awareness. So when those two things are present, we don't even really need to do anything to have the experience. It's just there. And to me, that's like a very hopeful message. And it's really been great for me to integrate that in daily life. It's an easy practice in a way when you think of it that way. But he didn't say like you just can do it. He said like through the application of shamatha and vipassana, this arises. So it's again a thing that will kind of flicker on and off and in intent, increase in intensity or sometimes be a little bit fuzzier. But the experience is always there for us to have. And so I want to start just with a short guided practice. And to do that, I'll share a screen here again in just a moment. But to begin, take just a second to take a posture that is relaxed but alert. Take a couple deep breaths. We already did a version of this in the beginning when we said the refuge prayer, but on your own now, take a moment to think of an intention. Make an intention for this practice in this session and make it personal. Make this something that you may have never said before. Just thinking today, what is your intention, your motivation for taking part in this session? A precise, practical intention. And then we're going to unify that with the second aspect, which is a broader altruistic motivation. This is not unlike unifying the idea of enlightenment with the path. And then having done that, take a look at this dot in the middle of the screen. And just place your attention on that dot. And think of that dot as being the anchor for our attention. When we get distracted, we just gently come back to the dot. Now you can find the dot because it's contrasted against that blue background. So even if your attention is placed on the dot and your mind is not wandering, you're still aware of the blue surrounding the dot. And it's not a problem. Just to further illustrate that, when we do a practice of meditation, we think of this white area as being the atmosphere around our anchor. We're able to place our attention on an object or a sound or the breath. But that anchor exists within some sort of atmosphere. And it's our mindfulness that keeps us engaged in the task. Mindfulness in Tibetan, here we're talking about the word drenpa. But similarly, we're also cultivating sheshin, which is awareness, a panoramic awareness, we could say. So our attention can be placed on the dot while we're aware of the atmosphere around it. Now we're using a visual metaphor here, but this applies to anything in our experience. We can keep our attention on that dot. We still notice some other things in the atmosphere around it. If that dot were our breath, we were placing our attention on the colored dots around it. Could be sounds we hear, could be sensations in the body. Every once in a while, one of those dots may get a little bigger. Because all of a sudden it seems a little bigger, our attention may be drawn to it. And then that's okay. We just gently with patience and a little bit of humor, come back to that central dot. Illustrate a distracted mind. Sometimes when one of those dots gets big, could be thinking about hunger. I'm a little hungry. And we kind of jump over to that dot. And if we're not being mindful, if we're not bringing ourselves back to that central dot, bringing ourselves back to the mindfulness, to the task at hand, then another dot may get a little bigger and we follow over to that one. What do I have in the fridge? Is that fish from 2 days ago still good? Probably not a good idea. Pretty soon, if we're not paying enough attention, this can be our experience. This, to me, I think is a great metaphor for a distracted mind. We're just following one dot to another. But really, in a practice where we've got balance, we can stay on that central dot. If we get distracted, which will happen, undoubtedly, we just come back to the central dot. And then what slowly starts to happen is those dots get a little bit smaller, a little less frequent. I think this is a pretty fair metaphor for how things can develop with the practice of shamatha that's balanced between mindfulness and awareness. So before we close this little section, just take a minute to check in again with that intention. So recall the intention you made with a practical, precise aspect and a broad, altruistic aspect. Right. So where we were last time, we stopped at the regard all dharmas as dreams slogan. And so I want to actually jump back to the part I referenced earlier. I want to read the section about ultimate bodhicitta as an introduction to this first slogan in the ultimate bodhicitta section. Trungpa says, ultimate bodhicitta is preparation for relative bodhicitta. Before we cultivate compassion, we first need to understand how to be properly. How to love your grandma, how to love your flea or your mosquito, that comes later. The relative aspect of compassion comes much later. If we do not have an understanding of ultimate bodhicitta, then we do not have an understanding of the actual working basis of being compassionate and kind to somebody. We might just join the Red Cross and make nuisances of ourselves or create further garbage. According to the Mahayana tradition, we are told that we can actually arouse twofold bodhicitta, relative bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta. We can arouse both of them. Then, having aroused bodhicitta, we can continue further and practice according to the bodhisattva's example. We can be active bodhisattvas. In order to arouse absolute or ultimate bodhicitta, we have to join shamatha and vipassana together. Having developed the basic precision of shamatha and the total awareness of vipassana, we put them together so that they cover the whole of our existence, our behavior patterns in our daily life, everything. In that way, in both meditation and post-meditation practice, mindfulness and awareness are happening simultaneously all the time. Whether we are sleeping or awake, eating or wandering, precision and awareness are taking place all the time. That is quite a delightful experience. Alaya, which we talked a little bit about last week and we'll talk about today, the basis. Alaya is the fundamental state of existence or consciousness, or it is divided into I and other, or into various emotions. It is the basic ground where things are processed, where things exist. And its basic state or natural style is goodness. It is very benevolent. There is a basic state of existence that is fundamentally good and that we can rely on. There's room to relax, room to open ourselves up. We can make friends with ourselves and with others. That is fundamental virtue or basic goodness, and it is the basis of the possibility of absolute bodhicitta. Here's my favorite paragraph. Once we have been inspired by the precision of shamatha and the wakefulness of vipassana, we find that there is room, which gives us the possibility of total naivete in the positive sense. The Tibetan for naivete is pakyang, which means carefree or let loose. We can be carefree with our basic goodness. We do not have to scrutinize or investigate wholeheartedly to make sure that there are no mosquitoes or eggs inside our alaya. The basic goodness of alaya can be cultivated and connected with quite naturally and freely in a pakyang way. We can develop a sense of relaxation and release from torment, from this and that together. So we've gone through and thank goodness for YouTube. There's all these previous sessions if anybody's missed, so you're welcome to go back and watch, and I'll do a recap next time around of each of the steps. But we went through Guru Yoga, we went through the 4 thoughts, we went through a short session of shamatha, and this is dealing with the associated practice of ultimate bodhicitta. The principal practice is tong-len. That's the principal practice of relative bodhicitta. This is the associated practice of ultimate bodhicitta, which we can sort of think of as the container for all of this, because this is really connecting with the ultimate situation. So regarding all dharmas as dreams, we did a brief instruction on that last time, which was to recap, take a moment, closing our eyes, imagining the room we're in. I'm going to do that right now. Why not? And then doing so, recognizing how that mental image of the room is just that. It's a mental experience. And then connecting that with the fact that that's not any different than when we're dreaming. And then if we can, we might recognize that maybe, just maybe, our waking experience is also just a mental experience. And that's kind of a practical instruction, but the way Trungpa talks about it, he says, this slogan is an expression of compassion and openness. It means that whatever you experienced in your life, pain, pleasure, happiness, sadness, grossness, refinement, sophistication, crudeness, heat, cold, or whatever, is purely memory. The actual discipline or practice of the Bodhisattva tradition is to regard whatever occurs as a phantom. Nothing ever happens. But because nothing happens, everything happens. When we want to be entertained, nothing seems to happen. But in this case, although everything is just a thought in your mind, a lot of underlying percolation takes place. That nothing happening is the experience of openness. And that percolation is the experience of compassion. Regarding things as dreams does not mean that you become fuzzy and woolly, that everything has an edge of sleepiness about it. You might actually have a good dream, vivid and graphic. Regarding dharmas as dreams, the slogan as it's translated in this book is regard all dharmas as dreams. Another way we could say it is regard all experience as dreams. But he says regarding dharmas as dreams means that although you might think that things are very solid, the way you perceive them is soft and dreamlike. For instance, if you have participated in group meditation practice, your memory of your meditation cushion and the person who sat in front of you is very vivid, as is your memory of your food and the sound of the gong on the bed that you sleep in. But none of these situations is regarded as completely invincible and solid and tough. Everything is shifty. Things have a dreamlike quality, but at the same time, the production of your mind is quite vivid. If you didn't have a mind, you wouldn't be able to perceive anything at all. Because you have a mind, you perceive things. Therefore, what you perceive is a product of your mind, using your sense organs as channels for the sense perceptions. And then we jump to the next slogan, which is examine the nature of unborn awareness. And this is one that I think we talked about this last week. There's a couple of different contemplations in a way that you can do here. I don't know that I want to use that approach though, because his is a little bit, the way Trungpa teaches this is a little bit different. I'll read you what's in Great Path first. It says, examine the nature of unborn awareness. When you look directly at the presence of mind, no color, no shape, no form is perceived. Since mind has no origin, it has never come into existence in the first place. Now, it is not located anywhere inside or outside the body. Finally, the mind is not some object that goes somewhere or ceases to exist. By examining and investigating the mind, you should come to a precise and certain understanding of the nature of this awareness, which has no origin, location, or cessation. And this, the way I'd always thought about it was looking for these things, taking a moment and just like investigating, as the verb is in here, like, what is the color of my mind? Which takes a little bit of, I think the first thing you may be likely encounter when you do this is the presupposition that there is a color, or the presupposition that, of course, you're not going to find a color. So I think one of the first things that this type of a practice awakens or makes us mindful to is just how many baked in assumptions there are, and so part of, I think, engaging with a practice like this is just loosening up a little bit to just be curious, like we probably know we're not going to find a color, but like as we do this, we're curious, like maybe we're going to find it. What is it? What is that color? I'm going to at least be open and look for it. But the way that Trungpa explains this practice is he says, look at your basic mind, just simple awareness, which is not divided into sections, the thinking process that exists within you. Just look at that, see that. Examining does not mean analyzing. It is just viewing things as they are in the ordinary sense. The reason our mind is known as unborn awareness is that we have no idea of its history. We have no idea where this mind, our crazy mind, began in the beginning. It has no shape, no color, no particular portrait or characteristics. It usually flickers on and off and on, all the time. Sometimes it is hibernating. Sometimes it is all over the place. Look at your mind. That is a part of ultimate bodhicitta training or discipline. Our mind fluctuates constantly, back and forth and back. Look at that. Just look at that. He's got that in italics. You could get caught up in the fascination of regarding all dharmas as dreams and perpetuate unnecessary visions and fantasies of all kinds. Therefore, it is very important to get to this next slogan, examine the nature of unborn awareness. When you look beyond the perceptual level alone, when you look at your own mind, which you cannot actually do, but you pretend to do, you find that there is nothing there. You begin to realize that there is nothing to hold on to. Mind is unborn, but at the same time, it is awareness, because you still perceive things. There is awareness and clarity. Therefore, you should contemplate that by seeing who is actually perceiving dharmas as dreams. If you look further and further at your mind's root, its base, you will find that it has no color and no shape. Your mind is, basically speaking, somewhat blank. There is nothing to it. We are beginning to cultivate a kind of shunyata possibility, although in this case, that possibility is quite primitive in the sense of simplicity and workability. When we look at the root, when we try to find out why we see things, why we hear sounds, why we feel, and why we smell, if we look beyond that and beyond that, we find a kind of blankness. That blankness is connected with mindfulness. To begin with, you are mindful of something. You are mindful of yourself, you are mindful of your atmosphere, and you're mindful of your breath. But if you look at why you are mindful, beyond what you are mindful of, you begin to find that there is no root. Everything begins to dissolve. That is the idea of examining the nature of unborn awareness. Part of the reason why these teachings resonate so much for me is that feels like something I can do all day long anywhere, in any circumstance. Whether I feel like I'm particularly mindful or steady, or whether I feel like I'm stressing out and my mind's racing, that's still something I can do, and I don't need a cushion, and I don't even need other people to be quiet or not in the room with me, or not, like, this is something you can do at any kind of situation, and is a useful practice. Like, I think like any method like this, doing a formal practice of it will help a lot. And I really like the idea that I think it's possible if you have if you're really good at doing applied practice, which I think is kind of, in my mind, I use that term as sort of a synonym for post meditation, because meditation is a funny word. Like, meditation actually doesn't mean like a thing that we do like that, where the origins of the term, it's not a verb like to throw, or to pick up. It's a verb like, the analogy that Carl Brunholz used is it's kind of like rain, like we don't rain, but it rains. Like, there is rain happens, so it's actually better to think of meditation as just a thing that's happening, and we can be aware and mindful of it, or not, but it's just happening, so the idea of meditation and post meditation is, I think, a tricky translation thing that we haven't quite figured out yet, and I personally like thinking of it as formal and applied practice. And so I think that one can have a pretty good applied practice game, and probably do pretty well, but I think formal practice, even just a little bit, can supercharge that applied practice. So I think if you're doing even a little bit of applied practice or even a little bit of formal practice of meditation, but throughout the day you're remembering to do these applied practices and connect, moments like that idea of like just kind of looking at the mind, that's super powerful, and that small amount of formal practice can supercharge and like potentiate the applied practice. They help each other, and ultimately the applied practice is super important, because that's the vast majority of our day. So finding ways to apply these things in everyday situations is crucial. And if we miss a practice someday, or we oversleep, or something happens where we can't do our formal practice, it's absolutely not the end of the world. There are plenty of other opportunities to do this stuff. One thing I mention a lot lately is I've been thinking about how when we do a formal practice, we're able to give a lot of attention to the method, and maybe like 90%. If it's placing attention on an object, some sort of anchor, we can, with about 90% or more, we can do that. But as soon as we get off the cushion and go into applied practice mode, then we have to feel good about 40 to 60% attention, because we're also doing something else. And that's just the way it is. Like, it's never going to be as simple and easy as it is on the cushion. So if we're getting 40 to 60% of our attention on an anchor as we do some simple task in daily life, that's really good. And to take that a step further, we could even say there's like a third category of like daily life, just daily life. If we're in a difficult conversation, or meeting with some really challenging situation, and we have to talk and figure stuff out, that's not going to look like our formal practice. But if we can keep about 10% of attention on some kind of anchor in that context, that's really good. That's really good for the setting. And so I think we have to give ourselves some grace with that kind of stuff. It is a victory to hold like 10% of mindfulness through a difficult situation. So these are some simple ways of doing that kind of stuff. And moving on, the the next slogan is self-liberate even the antidote. And the way he describes this is he has a discussion about antidotes in general. And he says antidotes are any notion that we can do what we want, and that as long as we are meditative, everything is going to be fine. But this text says to self-liberate even the antidote, the seeming antidote. We may regard going to the movies every minute, every day, every evening as our meditation, or watching television, or grooming our horse, feeding our dog, and taking a long walk in the woods. There are endless possibilities like that in the Occidental tradition, and for that matter, in the theistic tradition. The theistic tradition talks about meditation and contemplation as a fantastic thing to do. The popular notion of God, that he created the world, the woods were made by God, the castle ruins were created by God, and the ocean was made by God. So we could swim and meditate, or we could lie on the beach made by God and have a fantastic time. Such theistic nature worship has become a problem. We have so many holiday makers, nature worshipers, and so many hunters. I'm going to skip a little bit. He says that the whole point of the slogan is that antidotes of any kind, and for that matter, occupational therapies of any kind, are not regarded as appropriate things to do. We are not particularly seeking enlightenment or the simple experience of tranquility. We are trying to get over our deception. So all of these, each step is kind of unraveling, giving us a little bit less to hang on to or get hung up on as we move through these steps. So even these antidotes need to be released. And the idea that the mind is empty can itself become sticky for us. Like that can become a kind of sticky thing that we get stuck on and start to rely on as the answer, or like the one method. But we have ultimate and relative bodhicitta here, two aspects that we're trying to work with. So moving to, this is the part that really got me. So the fifth, our fifth, that's where we stopped last time, that slogan. And the next one is rest in the nature of alaya, the essence. And this is the one I really want to just kind of read because this is just all so good. So in Trungpa's words, the idea of this slogan is that in the sitting practice of meditation and with an understanding of ultimate bodhicitta, you actually transcend the 7 types of consciousness and rest in the 8th consciousness, alaya. The first 6 types of consciousness are the sensory perceptions: visual consciousness, hearing consciousness, smelling consciousness, taste consciousness, feeling or touch consciousness, and the 6th is the mind consciousness, or the basic coordinating factor governing the other 5. The 7th type of consciousness, nuisance mind, is a kind of conglomeration that puts energy into all of that. In Tibetan, it is called Nyun Yi. Nyun is short for Nyung Mo, klesha in Sanskrit, which literally means nuisance, defilements, neuroses, and Yi means mind. So to end quote, the nuisance mind here sometimes is referred to as like instantaneous consciousness. This is another term I've heard for it. There's different words that we use for that 7th consciousness. But you basically have the 5 senses, the mental consciousness that kind of receives all that information and is like sort of the executive of all of that information. And then we have the 7th consciousness, which is which he calls nuisance mind. Instantaneous consciousness, I think, alludes to the idea that it seems to put things in order one instant to the next, makes it kind of seem like there's a chronology and a through line. And then that 8th consciousness is what we're really talking about here, is resting in alaya, the 8th consciousness. So to go back to Trungpa's words, the idea of resting one's mind in the basic alaya is to free oneself from that 7-fold mind and rest in simplicity and in clear and non-discriminating mind. You begin to feel that sight, smell, sound, and everything else that happens is a production of home ground or headquarters. You recognize them and then come back to headquarters where those productions began to manifest. You just rest in the needlessness of those productions. The idea is that there is a resting place of some kind, which could be called primitive shamatha. There is a starting point, a returning point. You can look at me, and as you look at me, you might check yourself. but you might check beyond yourself and find that some homing device is already taking place. So the idea is to rest in alaya and to be with the homing device, to rest where the orders and information come from. This whole logic or process is based on taking it for granted that you trust yourself already to begin with. You have some kind of relaxation with yourself. That is the idea of ultimate bodhicitta. You don't have to run away from yourself all the time in order to get something outside. You can just come home and relax. The idea is to return to home, sweet home. You try to give yourself good treatment. You do not follow fixed logic or fixed conceptual ideas of any kind, including discursive thought. Resting in the nature of alaya means going beyond the sixth sense consciousnesses and even beyond the seventh consciousness, the fundamental discursive thought process, which brings about the other six. The basic alaya principle goes beyond all of that. Even in ordinary situations, if you actually trace back to find out where everything came from, you will find some primitive resting level. You could rest in that primitive basic existence, that existential level. According to this text on Lojong, that experience is known as basic goodness. So this slogan refers to an experience, not simply to the structural, mechanical process of projection. We could describe that process with the analogy of a film projector. And just for the effect and for different kinds of learners, I want to share my screen to keep it memorable. So we could describe that process with the analogy of a film projector. We have the screen, the phenomenal world. Then we project ourselves onto that phenomenal world. And we have the film, which is the fickleness of the mind, constantly changing frames. So we have a moving object projected onto the screen. That moving object is mechanically produced by the machinery of the projector, which has lots of teeth to catch the film and mechanical devices to make sure that projection is continuous, which is precisely the same situation as the sense organs. We look and we listen. Therefore, when we listen, we look. We connect things together by means of time, although things are shifting completely every moment. And behind the whole thing is the bulb, which projects everything onto the screen. That bulb is the cause of the whole thing. So resting in the nature of alaya is like resting in the nature of that bulb, which is behind the machinery of the film projector. Like the bulb, alaya is brilliant and shining. The bulb does not give in to the fickleness of the rest of the machine. It has no concern with how the screen is coming along or how the image is coming through. Resting in alaya is the actual practice of ultimate bodhicitta. What happens during sitting practice? You experience ultimate bodhicitta at that level. Ultimate bodhicitta is purely the realization that phenomena cannot be regarded as solid, but at the same time they are self-luminous. In the analogy of the film projector, you have to work with the lamp. You take the lamp out of the projector. There's no monkey business with the projector, and you just screw that lamp onto your regular old-fashioned fixture and you look at it. That is self-liberating alaya. It may be an embarrassing subject to discuss, but this book is designed for the ordinary practitioner. We are not believing in or cultivating alaya, but we are using it as a stepping stone. It would be dangerous if you cultivated it as an end in itself. In this case, it's just another step in the ladder. We're taking it very simply about alaya as just a clear mind, a basic clear mind. It is simplicity and clarity and non-discursive thought, very basic alaya. It may not be completely free from all the consciousnesses, including the eighth consciousness itself, but it is the alaya of basic potentiality. We have to be very clear on this, generally speaking. We're not trying to grasp the Buddha nature immediately at this point. This instruction on resting in alaya is given to somebody who is at the very beginning level. A lot of us have problems and we have no idea whether we are sitting or not sitting. We have struggles about that. So we're trying to work on our basic premises. It is a slowing down process. For the first time, we learn to slow down. How about that analogy? I love that one.
Really good.
Yeah. Any thoughts? Anyone want to share anything? Just that's a lot. How's that land for people? Yes. See a hand.
Hi, Lama Adam.
Hi, Betty.
How are you? And thank you for remembering me.
Ah, you're welcome.
Yeah, I was chanting mantras and tantras every day in my life.
Oh, that's wonderful. Good, good.
I'm glad to
Good.
see you.
Good to see you too.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll take just a moment to go through, we'll go through just the last, I think we've got just enough time to go through the last slogan today too. And that is, in post-meditation, be a child of illusion. So here, Trungpa says, being a child of illusion means that in the post-meditation experience, there's a sense that everything is based on creating one's basic perception out of one's preconceptions. I love this one too. Everything is based on creating one's perceptions out of one's preconceptions. If you can cut through that and inject some basic understanding or awareness, you begin to see that the games going on are not even big games, but simple illusory ones. To realize that requires a lot of mindfulness and awareness working together. Here we're talking about meditation in action, actually, or post-meditation discipline. So I hope that what we did in the beginning helped to lay some foundation for this, because he's used the phrases mindfulness and awareness repeatedly through this teaching about ultimate truth. And if we're doing shamatha, like that is a practice of mindfulness and awareness. So really right from the beginning, I mean, I think one of the things that blows my mind about this whole path of all these amazing methods and spiritual technology is you really do start kind of with everything you need. Like, I mean, and what I mean by that is like the first practice we start with, like it's sort of all there. I mean, it's in one way of looking at it. We also need all these different steps and to develop different things. But if you're doing a practice of shamatha, you know, and you have a balance between cultivating both Sheishin and Drenpa, mindfulness and awareness, the precision and the total awareness, you're kind of already doing this idea. So I'm going to read a little bit more about what Trungpa said, but one thing that isn't in this book, I believe it may be in the footnotes of Great Path. There is another translation of this slogan, the slogan being, in post-meditation, be a child of illusion. There's another translation that I believe Trungpa did where he said, in post-meditation, be a sorcerer. And the idea was a sorcerer conjures things, makes things appear, but he knows that he's the one who created them. And so often we move through the world creating all of these situations and narratives and perceptions about things from our preconceptions, as Trungpa says, and we have no idea that we did that. So like a simple practice I've been working with in my daily life is just, I mean, I don't want to go into a whole teaching on the skandhas, but when we encounter a thing, there is some feeling. So form is the first heap that we talk about. Then there's feeling. Feeling is like positive, negative, neutral. And then the third heap, perception, which Trungpa calls perception / impulse. I love that impulse. Like it's kind of, it seems like when we meet something positive, impulsively we try to pull it in. But And because it's like an impulse, it seems like they're the same thing. It seems like a thing that feels positive is a thing to be drawn in, and a thing that feels unpleasant is a thing to be pushed away. But we're really we're in the driver's seat every step of the way here. And I think that for me, a good place to spot that is go between that experience of positive and the reaction, the impulse to pull in or pull away. Yes, Daniel.
Well, would that be like what you said about Trungpa saying, be a sorcerer? I remember someone gave an analogy once and they said, someone who loves golf and someone who hates golf are out on the golf course at the same time together. One's having a great time, one's having a miserable time, and it's all because of just what they've created in their own mind.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's a third person who doesn't know why people keep hitting these little balls with sticks. Like the golf itself is one of those constructions. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it is like really like connecting with like how much impact we're having on the situation, what we're producing here, what we're projecting. So to move on, he says, and this I think is how we'll close, because this is kind of ties it all together. He says, illusion. Again, the slogan is, in post meditation, be a child of illusion. Illusion does not mean haziness, confusion, or mirage. Being a child of illusion means that you continue what you have experienced in your sitting practice into post meditation experience. Continuing with the analogy of the projector, during post meditation, you take the bulb out. You might not have the screen or the film at that point, but you transfer the bulb into your flashlight and carry it with you at all times. You realize that after you finish sitting practice, you do not have to solidify phenomena. Instead, you can continue your practice and develop some kind of ongoing awareness. If things become heavy and solid, you flash mindfulness and awareness into them. And that way you begin to see that everything is pliable and workable. Your attitude is that the phenomenal world is not evil, that they are not going to attack you or destroy you or kill you. Everything is workable and soothing. It's like swimming. You swim along in your phenomenal world. You can't just float. You have to swim. You have to use your limbs. That process of using your limbs is the basic stroke of mindfulness and awareness. It has this flash quality to it. You flash on things. So you're swimming constantly in post meditation. And during meditation, you just sit and rest in the nature of your alaya, very simply. That is how we could develop ultimate bodhicitta. It is very basic and ordinary. You can actually do it. That's the whole idea. It is not abstract. You simply look at phenomena and see their padded wall-like quality, if you like. That's the illusion, padded walls everywhere. You think that you're just about to strike against something very sharp while having a cup of tea or whatever, and you find that things bounce back on you. There's not so much sharp contrast. Everything is part of mindfulness and awareness. Everything bounces back like the ball in one of those little television ping pong games. When it returns, you might throw it out again by not being a child of illusion, but it comes back again, and with it a beep, so you become a child of illusion. It is first thought, best thought. When you look at things, you find that they are soft and that they bounce back on you at all times. It's not particularly intellectual. This slogan is about learning how to nurture ultimate bodhicitta in terms of mindfulness and awareness. We have to learn how we can actually experience that things in the post-meditation situation are still workable, that there is room, lots of space. The basic idea of being a child of illusion is that we don't feel claustrophobic. After your sitting practice, you might think, oh boy, now I have to do that post-meditation practice. But you don't have to feel that you're closed in. Instead, you can feel like you were a child of illusion, that you're dancing around and clicking with those little beeps all the time. It is fresh and simple and effective. The point is to treat yourself better. If you want to take a vacation from your practice, you can do so and still remain a child of illusion. Things just keep on beeping at you all the time. It's very lucid. It's almost whimsical. Being a child of illusion is very simple. It is being willing to realize the simplicity of phenomenal play and to use that simplicity as a part of awareness and mindfulness practice. It is a very strong phrase, child of illusion. Think about it. Try to be one. You have plenty of opportunities. All right. Thoughts or questions?
My thoughts are just a lot to contemplate.
Yeah, or rest.
Exactly.
I was thinking about it yesterday in terms of like how, you know, being aware of a distracted mind is good. And I think I spent a lot of years like really judging my post meditation or my applied practice because I was spotting things that I was labeling negative, you know, um, spotting distraction, spotting habits of all kinds, you know, judging and attachment and all those kinds of things. Um, but if we're really unifying ultimate and relative, um, when we see something that seems negative, that it has that feeling of negative, you know, and maybe we also spot the perception in the impulse to push it away, you know. But when we spot those things, like we're also spotting that light bulb. That is the bulb in the projector, you know, and that's awesome. If we could spot that and maybe just rest in it for a second, you know, maybe not continue that chain of like encounter, feeling, perception, impulse, naming it, putting it in a whole narrative about who we are and what we like and what we don't and what we want and all. Maybe we just, you know, notice that light bulb. Maybe just take a minute and rest a little bit. Yeah, it's powerful stuff. And it's all practice. It's like it's all practice, you know, and it doesn't have to be effortful.
Now I'm going to see that light bulb constantly. I'm
Good,
going to use
good.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. And we all have it already, you know, like it's totally already there. It's funny how like the ways that it just naturally happens, but like the one I think about all the time is when something scares you. If there's like a loud noise all of a sudden, like then it just all of a sudden we're not in the past or the future. We're not judging. We're just right there for a moment. There's like an instant of that. Yes, Daniel.
One of the things I've been attempting to do in post meditation is, you know, we always hear every being has been your mother or father in a previous life. And for a long time, it's like, yeah, okay, there's somebody, they were my mother. All right, no big deal, whatever. But now I'm like really trying to develop like a warm feeling for them instead of just up here. It's like really just like try to look at them with some affection. And it's not easy, but I can really see how rich the Dharma can be just in every situation that we know what to do.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think I don't know if this is the way you're doing that, but for me, an easy path for that is like just gratitude. And just like trying to generate a little gratefulness or a little sense of like you know, whatever they're doing, I know that they want to be happy. And I think that one's particularly useful for me because I think a lot of times where I get stuck is judging or like trying to impute a motivation onto somebody when the easy answer is like, you know, they're doing what they do because they want to be happy.
Yeah.
And me too. You know, and here I am being unhappy because I'm thinking about what this person's doing while they want to be happy, and I'm creating myself some suffering, and I might be creating them some suffering too because they can probably feel me thinking about that stuff. But if I just flip it a little bit to the gratitude or the connection, then that's a big thing, right? People can always read us more than we think, you know, and I feel I've been trying to wake up to that a little bit too. Like it's not it's not just my inner world when things are negative. Like that's definitely leaking out in various ways.
Yeah, and like cashiers is a good one because that's someone you're spending 30 seconds with, a minute with, and I try to make their day because they've got thousands of people every day just like, all right, whatever, thanks, goodbye. And there's just like no warmth there.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's so neat when like when I just think how cool it is when I can remember that like it doesn't really matter what's said or what accomplished. Like I just know if I leave an interaction with having made the person feel a little better, like that's great. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
yeah, thank you. I'll put the dedication prayer on the screen here. Thanks for working through that section with me. Like I love that material, and I particularly love Trungpa's presentation of it and the analogies that he uses, and the projector is just a perfect analogy for this stuff. And next we'll get into tong-len, which I think most people have had, but we'll explore Trungpa's presentation of it and do it in the context of the preliminaries and the ultimate bodhicitta practice. And I think, yeah, I'm just looking forward to all of this. And I just really appreciate the opportunity to take this deep dive with everybody. So we'll chant the 2 verses of the dedication prayer. And before we chant, just take one moment to reconnect with the intention you made when we did the practice earlier. And consider making an intention like this every day. If you didn't notice already, there's a precise practical aspect and a broad kind of total awareness aspect. So even in that sort of intention setting, you're working with the balance between mindfulness and awareness, wisdom and compassion. So with that in mind, we'll chant the dedication prayer. By this merit, may all beings obtain the omniscience of Buddhahood and defeat our common enemy, wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, may we free all beings. The courageous Manjushri, who knows everything as it is, Samantabhadra, who also knows in the same way, and also all the bodhisattvas, that I may follow in their path, I completely dedicate all this virtue. Take a moment to rest the mind. If I could make a play on an old Chevy Chase quote, be the bulb, be the bulb. All right. Anybody know that movie anymore? This is going to be dated references.
Which one is it? Chevy Chase?
That's what is that? Caddyshack?
Yes, that's Caddyshack.
Oh,
Okay.
that's Caddyshack.
Be the bulb.